All right, my panel's here in the arena. CNN legal analyst, former federal prosecutor Elliot Williams, CNN political commentator, Republican pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson, former communications director in the Biden White House and a CNN political commentator Kate Bedingfield, and former Republican Congressman and Speaker pro tem Patrick McHenry. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Kate Bedingfield, Graham Plattner in Maine.
Yes.
Democratic voters sent a pretty clear message to the party in saying they wanted Plattner. They didn't want the establishment choice. Janet Mills had to drop out before primary day because she didn't have enough money. What does it say to you that they wanted him, that this was an overwhelming choice? And do you think this is going to be a situation like what we saw with Trump in 2016, where people like the person so much they'll overlook it? Or is he going to run headlong into the actual laws of political gravity in a general election?
Yeah, I think what it clearly says is people are frustrated, at least Democrats, are frustrated with the status quo. They feel like their voice is not being heard. In Graham Plattner, they see somebody who they think is going to take on the standard way of doing business in Washington in a way that they like. That is clearly a very overarching message here. I personally, I think it's demoralizing that his transgressions are being overlooked in this way. However, I'm not overly stunned, in part because I think that the gender breakdown on how people are reacting to what they've read about him is very telling. Where I think it's going to be a potential political problem for him, the electorate in Maine is heavily female, is older. But I will say, when I see Trump attacking him, I mean, what he's got to do is win Biden-Collins voters. He's got to pull some Biden-Collins voters from 2020 over his way, and Donald Trump continuing to attack him is one way that some of those people, may come along. So, listen, I personally don't love it, but the people of Maine, I don't live there, so they don't really care what I think. But I think I'm going to just say it, and I have said it consistently. I think it's an indictment of our party that we're willing to look the other way on this, personally.
Well, I think what we're finding out is Graham Plattner's least offensive aspects are the actual Nazi tattoo. And that's what's being exposed over time. His message on primary night is something that it's going to be very difficult to convince Maine voters that Susan Collins is something that they don't otherwise believe. Really, what Graham Plattner needs is just Biden voters. He needs that Biden coalition. He is not Joe Biden in Maine. And he certainly doesn't match Susan Collins' political capacity that she's built over a long time. And she is a beast of a political operator in that very small state of Maine, and is an operator here in D.C. in a moderate way, in a very unmoderate Washington, D.C. Complex, obviously, with a midterm like this, but far more complex for the Democratic Party right now with the infighting with Mandami and the primaries in New York, and obviously Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's coalition pushing candidates like Graham Plattner that are a problem for the general election.
Congressman, the NRSC put out a memo, and it said this, quote, "The political fundamentals in Maine remain challenging, and it is a fatal mistake to assume that Plattner is too damaged to win." They note that Susan Collins has won tough races before and can win here, but only if we meet this moment with total urgency.
Yes, that means money, and that's exactly what those memos are written for.
Yeah.
So you'll read them, they will clip this, and they will go raise money off of it. So in that way, they've served their purpose. But the money map for Republicans, the Republican Senate map, is complex. The chessboard of moving parts of competitive races, how you tie people down in certain states in order to free up cash in others. This is a playing field certainly tilted to the Democratic Party based off of money and the popularity of the president and the economic situation right now, for sure.
Yeah. Kristen, when you talk to voters, I think that, every single time Donald Trump did something that we thought was going to make him unelectable, that turned out to not be correct. But for most other candidates, it remains so that they can commit offenses that will cause people to basically say, I can't vote for that person. How do you think what's gone on with Graham Plattner cuts?
I think that's part of the reason why he's trying very much to make this race as much about Trump as possible and as little about Graham Plattner as possible. Because I think you're right. I think the rules that apply to Donald Trump defy the usual laws of political physics. And so wanting to think that you can absorb some of that onto yourself, I mean, it is entirely possible that Graham Plattner could win this race. That assumes there is not another shoe to drop, which We got a long way to go, and a lot of people going to be poking around in things a lot harder than the Democratic operatives in Maine did before this guy ran away with this nomination. Got a long way to go. Republicans are wise to be sounding the alarm that Susan Collins has overperformed in the past, but there's no guarantee it will continue. But I think that Democrats have really screwed up by not having somebody more formidable in this seat.
Let's watch what Plattner had to say back to President Trump, because late in the week he did respond to the president calling him a pig and a thug. Take a look.
Taking it to make sure that the Epstein class, that Donald Trump and all of his depraved billionaire friends who think that they can get away with disgusting acts, think that because of their money and their power and their wealth and their influence, that they're above the law, they're about to find out that they're not. And it's got them terrified, and they should be.
What's interesting is that Graham Plattner, as we've all been discussing here, is a very damaged candidate. However, the words he used right there were Epstein, Trump, billionaire, class, and some other word that's escaping me. These are all things that are very resonant with voters right now in a moment when the president's approval rating is certainly below 40%. Kristen can verify my math here, but the president's not doing that well. Those are terms that resonate with people. I don't know, man. It's every iconic, or every institution in the Senate can lose at some point. It happened to John Cornyn this time around. It can happen to Susan Collins. This is just such a fascinating race with all of the different factors. It's just hard to know whether those words like billionaire and Epstein are going to be enough to break through.
And I do think, and since I've excoriated my own party, I will say, it is deeply infuriating to watch Republican operatives who have defended Donald Trump at every turn come out and suddenly act like, they have some moral high ground here. And so I think, to the point we've been discussing about Plattner making this race about Trump, I do think that the continued echo, the chorus of Republicans, again, acting like they have some high ground on this, also probably plays in Plattner's favor, because people look at it and go, are you kidding me? Like, who are you to tell me that this is, that this is unacceptable behavior when you're defending the guy who, laundry list of offenses that we won't even lay out here. So I do think the more that sort of chorus continues to try to come in off the top rope, I think the more it actually winds up having the opposite effect.
Yeah, I mean, Congressman, is this just what we're destined for? That suddenly we as a country are not going to hold our political leaders to moral standards
as
that
if
you
we've
would try
done
to raise
something
your
wrong,
children to?
as if we've done something wrong and this is our punishment. I mean, but look, he mentions Epstein files. What does Susan Collins have a damn bit to do with that? Not at all. So, but the point is, it polls well because it undermines institutions, and this is what we have in both parties: the decay of both parties, the weakening of both parties. No one has moral authority to say anything at the moment, and Epstein is a full revelation of this, about what are secrets kept and of the billionaire class and everything else. The question is whether or not that is salient against the human person that he is running against, and whether or not Maine voters think in those terms. You see, certainly highly partisan states, like at Texas, you could see them come home based off of that, those political dynamics. In Maine, it's much more of a squishy set of voters there, much more pragmatic than the rest of the country, far more complicated to do the math for either party in that state. And the rest of the country is not that way, mostly.
Yeah, really interesting. All right, coming up next here.